what I want to talk about quick is combative imagery or crisis rehearsal, mental imagery, visualization, call it what you like. But going through a scenario inside your head of effective combative performance. Right? So it can be any scenario that you like. It could be something you've seen, something you've read about, something you saw in a movie. It could be guy walks down the street, he looks quite fucking intimidating. Imagine you to yourself, if that fucker kicked off on me right now, what would I do? How would I perform? So mental imagery. So what you're looking to do when you do this effectively is to communicate with parts of your brain that do not know the difference between real, simulated, or intently visualized, as long as they elicit an emotional response. So visualization, right? So a lot of people say, oh, I can't visualize. So if I said to you, don't think about a purple penguin, you would have to think about a purple penguin in order not to think about what I told you not to think about. And that image of the purple penguin will not be a pristine picture in your head. It might be some flashed 2D flat image of a purple penguin, but you would definitely think about what I just said. If I said to you, what colour's your front door? And it was red, you get a flash of an image of what colour your front door is before you told me what colour your front door was. And that is, in essence, visualization. Now people say it should be like a pristine video playing behind your eyelids. Well, you can get it like that, but that's not initially how it is. But the key to visualization will be, first of all, to get yourself into a relaxed, receptive state. It's almost a meditative state, if you like. So if you're going to meditate, the best suggestion would be go to a place where you're not going to be disturbed, switch off all phones or any possible alarm or anything else, darken the room somewhat, sit or lie comfortably in unrestricted clothing. First thing you want to do is close your anatomical mind. You want to quieten it. So right now you're in what's called beta brainwaves, where you're cognitive and you're thinking about stuff. And we go through beta brainwaves all day. So when you actually meditate and you put your anatomical mind on pause, let's say, you are in what's called alpha brainwaves. And alpha brainwaves are your mind is idle. You're just completely relaxed. And that's the ideal state for visualization or any suggestion of any kind, right? Beyond alpha brainwave is theta brainwaves, and that's where you're just about to fall asleep. So you don't want to just about to fall asleep, but you do want to clear your mind. Does that make sense? So the way you want to do it is get to a place that's nice, quiet and comfortable. Sit, let's say. Sit. And focus on your breathing. So box breathing would be in 3 seconds through your nose, hold it for 3 seconds, out 3 seconds, hold it for 3 seconds. So imagine I'm drawing a box. So breathing in, hold, breathing out, hold, like so, making a box. So imagine that you've done that 5 times. In that 5 times that you're just focused on your breath, you're not thinking. That is a meditative state. That's what it is, right? So the idea would be, first of all, focus on your breathing, get nice and relaxed. And then I want you to picture a pre-rehearsed scenario. So imagine the scenario is you're walking down the street, guy gives you eye contact that's harsh, you recognise it, you try to go the opposite way, he moves towards you, he's coming towards you menacingly, reaches in behind his pocket to grab something, and you're forced to, I don't know, blitzkrieg him. So you hit him on his way in, you catch, you beat him down, and it's done. So you're going to picture that in your head. So if you were going to visualise a person suddenly encroaching upon you to be assaultive, ask yourself, what would they look like? What's intimidating to you? What would they sound like? What dialogue would they use? What noise would they make? You know, how would that make you feel? Initially, imagine the adrenaline hitting you, but you're in total control of it. And you really fuck, there's a threat in front of me. Now imagine throwing, boom, that first preemptive strike that you do. You just lash out. And first of all, imagine the situation going completely your way. You take one good peachy shot in the forehead, his head snaps back and he hits the ground. Well, try and visualise in that moment, if you would, what you would see, sudden encroachment, what you would feel, bone-to-bone contact, and what you would hear, that nice acoustic sound as you fucking rattle his crate. Maybe he moans out, boom, then he feels a slump on the body where you feel him hit the floor. So see what you would see, hear what you would hear, feel what you would feel, right? This would be a basic visualization. And then you could start to mess with what they call the submodalities of it. So if you visualize someone suddenly coming towards you and you stop, hit them in the head with a palm, and you visualize that 3 times, ask yourself, did I visualize that in color, or was it black and white? Was it flat and 2D, or was it 3D moving? These are submodalities. So the way it was taught to me was, imagine that you're sat as Colonel Picard in fucking Starship Enterprise. And you're in your seat and you've got all these buttons and a big screen in front of you. Right? So this is where they help people get over anxiety and addiction and phobias. Right? So if I wanted to imagine something and I wanted it to heighten my response in an emotional sense, I would imagine it bigger. So my visualization in my head, I would imagine as Colonel Picard sat in that chair, hitting this button, and all of a sudden, whoosh, the screen that I was looking at was massive. Can you picture that in your head? Now I'd imagine fucking with the submodalities. So I'd imagine turning this switch here, which makes the colour brightly vivid. And then I would imagine it turning this one here, which tweaks up the volume in an acoustic sense and makes the picture much more three-dimensional, as if I'm there. Heightening the submodalities would heighten the experience. If I make it bigger, brighter and louder, it's going to elicit more of an emotional response. Does that make sense? Conversely to that, if it was something that I wanted to get over, so imagine you're phobic about spiders, right? But if I imagined big screen, fucking big spider, vividly, brightly coloured, well, you'd shit yourself. So initially you would visualise it very different. So if I wanted to play down the image, I would make the screen very small and quite far away. I would also make it black and white instead of colour, flat and two-dimensional rather than three-dimensional, because this would play down the feelings that I'm eliciting. This is how you would deal with phobia. Right? The other thing is, when you visualise, you want to visualise in the first person. So what that means is I'm visualising, seeing what's in front of me out of my eyes the way I would see it. And if I looked down, all I would see is my hands. So imagine a game like Doom or Call of Duty, where all you see on the screen is the hands and the gun. Can you picture that? And it's as if you're looking out your own eyes. That's visualising in the first person. Visualising in the second person is where you pull out of yourself and you visualise looking at you. So I can see the back of me, I can see me in three-dimensional form, like I'm witnessing me doing something. Does that make sense? That would be visualising yourself in the second person. That's useful if you want to visualise, let's say, I don't know, let's say you got a combative grading on Tuesday and you want to run through the skills in your head, well, you would visualise in the second person. You would visualise watching yourself do the skill pristine. Make sense? If you are using combative imagery for crisis rehearsal, i.e. how I'd fight the fight, I don't want to picture myself on a screen doing it in the second person. I want to visualise out of the first person me doing it. So I visualise my hand hitting that target, and all I see is the back of my hand as it hits your head, as your head snaps back. I do not see the actual figure motion of me moving. So visualising in the first person is essential. Imagine seeing what you would see, hear what you would hear, feel what you would feel. Fuck with the submodalities. Imagine that you see it's bigger, it's brighter, etc. Then have a plan B. So imagine the same visualisation. Person's give you a problem, he's coming towards you. Previously you just hit him once and he went down, but now he just staggers. So you imagine this kind of motion, and if you let him recover, he's coming forward aggressive. So now it's necessary for you to go beyond this single strike, and attach it and follow up quickly and effectively. Can you picture that in your head? So my plan A would be preemptive strike, man down. And I'd visualise the success of that. And as soon as the man went down, I want you to visualise in that moment seeing him go down, And then I want you to imagine that, fuck, that anticlimax, that was it, fuck it, all right, now I'm off. Imagine that euphoric feeling that you'd feel, fuck, that fucking worked. I did that. You know, you'd have all the emotional state change if that was the case. And then imagine plan B is, and your plan B is you hit the cunt, you fucking have to grab him and you repeatedly hit him. And imagine hitting him, he's still struggling, hit him again, boom, and now he drops. You feel that slump and you know he's down. And then you look around, see if there's anyone else, and you get gone. Right? But if you visualise that intently while you're sat visualising, you are now working what's called internal visual. You are picturing in your head that experience, but you're not moving. Does that make sense? That's the way I initially want you to introduce yourself to combative imagery. Visualise knocking that fucker out with one shot. Then visualise that there's a need to follow up, but you're still successful. And then have a plan C. And the plan C is you're trying to negotiate this fucker and all of a sudden, wham, he throws a big shot and you're forced to cover your head. And I want you to imagine, what does that feel like? That big heavy shot hitting me in the head. What does that feel like? That moment I've had to cover my head. That's an oh shit moment. Momentarily, I'm frozen. Then I want you to imagine reaching for him and grabbing him and just beating the fucking shit out of him as you would, putting him down and finishing. I want you to imagine how high your heart rate would be, how stunned and alarmed you'd be to find yourself finally, for real, in a combative situation. So you visualise first strike, man down. You visualise the need to follow up, and you visualise you were too late and he's on you. So you're mapping into your subconscious brain options. So understand, your subconscious brain will always do what's best for you if it has the choice. So if you don't train, if you're a lefty liberal that's never been mugged yet and you think it's never going to happen to you, then chances are you've never visualised in your head finding yourself in a violent situation. You've never pre-rehearsed in your head what you would do as a solution. So in your subconscious brain for that individual, there is no data. When suddenly faced with a stimulus, in this case violent subject, there is no data on the data banks. There's no response because that person's never experienced that said simulation or scenario before. So there's nothing on the disk. So that moment when the person freezes like a rabbit in the headlights, you are going from cognitive to middle brain, and as you go to middle brain, your subconscious is desperately searching through files to see if there's a solution to this situation, and there isn't one. So you will capitulate, you will freeze, or you will do something else. Nothing productive. Whereas, if you have had such a situation before in your life, you've experienced violence a few times and you now know how to operate during it, your subconscious brain will immediately default to what you did last time. Or, better than that, if you are a combative trainee, so you train for these kind of situations happening and you perfect your skills and you understand the importance of mental focus and mental conditioning, and you also simulate and scenario train on distress, etc. Well, now you're again communicating with those parts of your brain that do not know the difference between having a real situation, a simulated situation, or in this case, an intensely visualized situation. As long as all three of those elicit an emotional response, a change in your state. So if you visualize intently enough, the three scenarios that I just talked about, your heart rate will escalate. Your breathing will shallow. You will get tension in your jaw, your fists will clench, your shoulders will clench up, your physical state will change based on the mental imagery you are putting in your head. Does that make sense? Yes? Right? So you are eliciting an emotional response via intense visualization, and you can make it more intense by visualizing yourself in the first person, you doing what it is you see in front of you, as opposed to you out of your body watching yourself. And if you play with the submodalities, what you'd hear, what you see, what you'd feel, you can make it much more intentful. So mental rehearsal is very useful because it maps into your subconscious brain now a solution to said stimuli. So even if you've never had that situation for real in your life, even if you've not simulated that situation for real in your life, but you've intensely visualized what you would do, your subconscious brain now has a response. And like I said, your subconscious brain will always do what's best for you if there's a choice on the disc. And the only way that you put data on the disc is when you elicit emotional response. That's why if you have had real experience of violence and you know how you'll operate, that's fused in now. If you've had simulated experience again and again and again where you know how you operate under fight duress, that's fused in now. And if you supplement that with visualization, crisis rehearsal, or combative mental imagery, you can actually enhance your skill set. Where else is this very useful? This is also very useful for learning a new skill. This is also very useful if you are injured and you can't train. So you just visualize your training. And what you'll find if you do it intently enough, muscle fibers will fire off because you're cutting the neural pattern, again downloading a response. So very good, very useful if you want to supplement enhancement to your skills. It's very useful if you want to pre-rehearse maybe a grading or something you're doing. Obviously, visualization applies to anything at all. So if you're going to have a talk with your boss, imagine yourself sat there with confidence, confident body language, how you speak, how you'll be articulate. Imagine the dialogue going on in your head. Everybody that has ever done anything in life, whether it's an architect, whether it's a fucking movie star, a politician, anyone at all who's ever done any endeavour, the whatever they did started first as a picture in their head. They saw it as a picture in their head. So even the most amazing structure, the Taj Mahal, started as a picture in somebody's head before it became a blueprint, before it became a manifestation. So you think about it the same way. I want a blueprint in my head. How would I deal with such and such if it come my way effectively? And if it didn't work out, what's my plan B? What's my plan C? So I'm constantly active and operational. And then I would visualize myself doing it. Now you're mapping in a blueprint to how you respond. I can't tell you enough how important crisis rehearsal is. So when we talked about before things like planning for a home invasion, God forbid, well, you want your perimeter security correct, but one good visualization would be, imagine 2 o'clock in the morning your fucking door got breached and there's 2 people in your house armed. Imagine that initial realization of that, how you feel. Then imagine getting control of the adrenaline and actually doing something about it. That would be a good place to crisis rehearsal. Do you understand what I mean about this crisis rehearsal? Mental imagery. Play the shit through in your head. You know, as simple as. It really is an extremely useful thing to do. Right, just as one exercise I'm going to give you now to emphasize the power, if you like, of visualization. Right? So there's not a lot of space here, so let's see if I can make this work. Where I am now, right, I'm stood square. My feet are going to stay. I'm not going to move my feet. All I'm going to do is I'm going to point forward with my finger, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn as much as my hip structure will allow, right, without moving my feet, until I reach the furthest point in which I can turn comfortably. Does that make sense to you? And what I'm doing with this pointed finger is I'm pointing to a visual reference point on the wall of as far as I can turn right now, comfortably. Yes? So that's what I want you to do. I want you to stand where you're at, put your hand in front of you like you're pointing, and I want you to turn without moving your feet, just your transverse core, and point to the furthest point you can move without cramping up. If you moved any more, I'd cramp. And I want you to get a visual index on the wall of what you're pointing at. Right? Do that for me now. Right? So hand in front, put your finger out in front, right, turn all the way around, find a visual reference point on the wall, turn as far as you can, as far as you can, as far as you can. Should cramp, should hurt. Right? Get a fixed visual on the point that you're pointing on, so you know where it is. Get your reference point. All right, as soon as you've got that, give me a thumbs up. Right, come back now. Now all I want you to do is close your eyes and breathe. And I want you to first of all visualize in your head doing the same thing but going clear past it. Literally imagine in your head pointing and turning and going past it clearly, very easily. I want you to visualize that in your head. Right? Just do that. Visualize in your head, hand goes out in front, you're pointing, you turn your body to the reference point and you easily pass your previous point for a new reference index. See that in your head, right? And come back to normal, right? And now all I want you to do is do what you just saw. So now I'm going to visualize pointing past where I was, and then I'm going to go past where I was quite easily. Right, so try it yourself. Now, if you can't make this work right now during this lesson as I talk you through it, think about what I just said. You're putting your finger out, you're turning your body as far as you can comfortably until you get a reference point. Right? And you're pushing it, you're going as far as you can, and then you're turning back, and then you're visualizing going beyond that without moving. And then you're going to do exactly what you just did. And what you'll notice is that you easily sail past it. Well, what's happened in that moment? You didn't suddenly get any more fucking flexible, did you? Or did you? What's happened in that moment is you just pushed past the current mental boundary that you placed on yourself to how far you could turn. That's all you did. So you pushed beyond it. So I want you to try that now. So you visualized turning, and now just for one more time, close your eyes, visualize internally, finger out, turning and pointing. And then when you're ready, I want you to put your finger out, turn and do it, and go past where you were. Just show me that. Open your eyes and notice whether you pass your reference point. Right, good. How many of you passed your reference point?
Yeah.
Fucking simple, isn't it, really? You're like, fuck, it was pretty easy. Yeah, all you did was remove a mental barrier. You visualized removing a mental barrier so you could go further, and then you did it. So visualization is very, very powerful. It can elicit an emotional response. So another thing to visualize, if you visualize somebody yawning in your head, you'll most likely yawn. If you visualize taking a lemon, cutting the lemon in half, watching the zest pop off it, taking that half a lemon and smelling it, right, and then visualize biting into that lemon, how that would make you salivate. Well, if you do that visualization intently enough without doing it, you'll trigger salivation. So what are you doing? You're by literally eliciting a different shift in your emotional state, you're initiating a different physiology. Does that make sense? Very, very powerful shit. Very, very clever shit. So visualization, crisis rehearsal, mental rehearsal, very, very useful. And visualization is very useful for anything in life. So if you're going to an interview, you want to perform well, if you're going to a sporting event, you want to do your best, whatever else, see it in your head, perfect picture form, because if you can conceive it, you'll believe it, you'll achieve it. Really important. Cool. Any questions on that? All right, good shout. All right then.